Next up, we have a panel discussion covering building a digital brand experience for winning customers. Introducing our moderator, Danette Breitenbach. She is the marketing, retail, and finance editor at bizcommunity.com. As a seasoned marketing communications practitioner who has worked on a freelance basis for over 20 years, Danette Breitenbach recently took up the position of editor in finance, healthcare, and mining at bizcommunity.com, a South African-based online news publisher catering to business audiences across 19 industries in Africa. Having freelanced extensively for bizcommunity.com across many of its portals, Danette has worked across a variety of industries over the years. In 2018, she completed her master's in financial journalism at BITS and her thesis set in the mining industry. Welcome, Danette.
Thank you, Adam. I'll be moderating the panel today. We will be talking about building a digital brand experience for winning customers. So even though digital has been around for quite a long time, the concept of digital and digital transformation is still seen very much as a new normal. And this is even despite COVID-19 speeding up the move to e-commerce for so many brands. But it's always a mixed bag. So some brands have got it right, some brands are kind of there, and some brands are there. And so today we have three panelists who are going to discuss some of these pitfalls, the challenges, and of course the wins with us. So I'd like to introduce first Peter Elstoffer, who is the CEO of UCook South Africa. Hi, welcome, Peter.
Hi.
Then I've got, good, thanks, and you. Good. And then it's Janie Pillay, who is the Group IT Executive, Customer and Commerce for Mr. Price in South Africa. Welcome, Janie. And last but not least, Sam Wilson-Spurt, who's the Head of Digital Marketing for Woolworths South Africa. Welcome. So what I thought we'd do is to start off with is perhaps you could all just give a brief introduction of yourselves. And perhaps we can start with you, Peter. I just have you lined up like that on the screen, so if that's all right.
Cool, yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter. I'm the CEO at UCook. I've been in that role for, I think, the last 2.5 years. So kind of like, sort of got involved, I guess, just before COVID really hit us. And yeah, I think it's probably for most of the people, COVID has been an interesting period. I think we've been more on the fortunate side of things. So it has been fairly positive over the last 2 years, but it has also been like, I guess, difficult to see the bigger macroeconomic developments. And I think, yeah, I guess we saw us as a brand, we felt like, it's important for us to help during this period. And I think we've tried to really, I guess, give back as much as possible from our side as well to businesses that actually have struggled during the period.
Thanks, Peter. Sam, let's move on to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Sam. I work in digital marketing at Woolworths. So I head up digital media, which includes as well customer care and obviously some analytics bits and the marketing itself. Yeah,
thanks.
But that I've been doing this for a decade. So I've been around quite a long time at Woolies.
You must have a very interesting perspective on digital, and we will get to that as soon as we've spoken to Janie. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Janie, and I come in from Mr. Price Group. I'm head of IT and take care of customer commerce. And what that means is I take care of the customer and all the touch points in the business in terms of how a customer transacts with us. I've been at Mr. Price Group for almost 2 years now. Recently launched a new e-commerce platform, their app, taken a few of their traditional brands online. And prior to that, launched the Toys R Us and Babies R Us website in terms of shopping. And then before that, launching of the Dis-Chem e-commerce store. So that's me.
Wow. All right, let's kick off straight away because I think we've got lots we can talk about. I'd like to just start off with Sam, and I am picking on you to start off because you've been in the business for a very long time. And I think I'd be interested to get your perspective on digital today as opposed to even a decade ago and how you've seen this change. And what I think we'd be very interested in is where digital lies for brands.
I'm not quite sure what you mean where digital lies. I think one of the main things is I do have issues with people talking about digital as a new thing, because I mean, I have been working in digital for 2 decades. And you do find when people start saying, the new big thing, you think like, God, you missed the train, dude, you know, like a long time ago. So that's one thing. What has been interesting at Woolies when I started about, I think it was 9 years ago, so it's very much like, we're not quite sure what we need you to do, but we know we need people like you. So my job has changed a lot over the last decade, which has been really, really cool. And I think that's true for all people who are working in digital in a larger corporate, especially, where you've got to kind of ooze into the structures, because they're very set to start with. But yeah, I think moving into, especially in digital media, the rise of social media, the way we all got addicted to Facebook pages, and all of a sudden they started charging from the squeeze in 2013, Google, and they're trying to make sure that their products can't be broken apart. So the way they're kind of building all of the Facebook and Google and versus publisher issues, and how that's kind of played out over the last decade. I think there's a lot of really, really interesting stuff, I think.
Yeah, I think what I was really meaning, and you did touch on that and address it, is where digital fits in the marketing mix, because there is a tendency to see it as something separate and also something that will solve all your problems. And Janie, maybe you can weigh in here, given your experience with Dischem and Toys R Us, on how brands should really be approaching digital and perhaps how they are.
Yeah. It's been quite a journey, and my digital marketing journey started at Vodacom in the very early stages of them adopting a digital strategy as part of their integrated marketing. And it was still something that we had to justify within the marketing spend. So it was always a challenge, bringing digital to the table. And we again, why, the question was always, why do we as brands need to invest in this area? And it was like, for us, it was like the obvious thing. This is where your customers were. This is where your customers were fully engaged. Why wouldn't you be spending time spending or investing in this area? And then as I evolved in my career and joined Dischem, I found the same trend. So it was like an ugly cousin, it was the same story. And I think since the, how the shift has moved in terms of marketing, I see the adoption is much higher now. I think there's, the marketing managers and heads, they see the value, they see where their customers are talking to them, and they want to be visible in those channels. So I think it's evolved. And I think I'm very blessed to be with a company at the moment, with Mr. Price Group, who holds digital marketing, how can I describe it? It's a very key part of the marketing strategy. Yeah.
Right. So
I think I'd like to just
Peter,
step in there too. Sorry, I will not do this the
of
whole
course,
time.
no step in.
But I think that is a major shift. I think Woolworths has been spending a large proportion of its marketing budget on digital for quite a long time. So we're quite lucky, and we got in there quite early. But I think C-suite buy-in is so unbelievably important. And then there's been a period between C-suite paying lip service to the concept of being digitally led, and very much in the last 5 years or so actually landing that concept, because the budgets that you need to launch digital are not small, and they do not show returns for a long time.
Yes.
And I think, so it's easy to say we're digitally first. You've got to put your checkbook behind it, and it's a really difficult thing to do in an area that's not very profitable to start with. So yeah, I think that's just completely underlining what you said there.
Very good point. And it takes me to Peter. So Peter, YouCook is a digital entity, but how was it received when you started? What were the challenges you faced as, like, Woolworths and Mr. Price have bricks and mortar and digital, but you started off as a purely digital entity, but how were you received? Was it hard? And I also think perhaps you can touch on the budget, because we all think, as Sam said, or not all of us, people think it's easy. Digital is an easy win, and I don't think it always is.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question. I think, I've been, I guess, involved in digital brands over the last 10 years now. I actually have founded Zando 10 years ago. So it was quite, I guess, I think I can relate to what Sam said, like, digital has been around for a long time. And I think what's interesting is, we always have focused on digital, and I think actually it has evolved a lot. I think, if you look at how marketing was done 10 years ago and what was important versus how marketing is done, digital marketing specifically, how it's done today is actually quite different. It's worlds apart actually, which I think is a little bit to the point that Sam made as well earlier. I think, yeah, I mean, like lots of the brands that have been involved, they started like purely, I guess, digital. And I think what's nice about that to some extent is it has a, it's quite a bit easier to actually get going with. You don't have to have massive budgets, and you can actually be quite a bit more targeted in terms of like how you launch a brand, who do you expose it to, and that kind of stuff. So like, sort of you don't have to spend millions and millions of rand on running like a TV campaign, radio campaign, or billboard campaign. So it's quite nice in the sense of like, you can actually get going with, I guess, much smaller budgets. I think what's also interesting is that, as you grow as a brand, as you get bigger, we have, throughout the years, tried to also make our, I guess, sort of way into the other way, where we're saying, like, let's also access the more traditional ways of marketing. And what's interesting is actually, we found real success, actually. We've done, TV campaigns, we've done radio campaigns. And, I think the realization is that it's actually quite difficult to make that work. And I think, especially when it comes to measuring return on investment, which I think is quite important for us, because we come from a digital space, everything is measurable. Like, you have the data, you can calculate exactly how much did you pay for the customer, and like, what is the customer lifetime value, and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's very transparent in that sense. And when you try to do these, I guess, sort of more traditional ways of marketing, first of all, it's very difficult to measure. But secondly, it's also, I think we realized that there's quite a big break from actually someone, driving in a car, listening to a radio campaign, and actually making the step from that into going on the phone and actually buying something or signing up for something. That is quite a long break. Whereas, like, if you listen to a radio campaign and then you go into a store, you recognize the brand and immediately you just grab it, right? So I think it's quite a different dynamic, which I think is interesting to see. And I think in that sense, I think what we've realized is, like, what really works for us is, like, focusing on digital channels when it comes to really performance and measurable things. What can be helpful is using traditional media to, I guess, sort of brand build, and as such support brand awareness, and as such, improve overall performance across the board on digital channels as well. But I think, coming back to the initial question, I think, it's starting off as a digital brand certainly has advantages to get things going. But, also as you get bigger and as things get more competitive, it also gets more expensive and, like, more difficult to further scale.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to move and just talk a little bit about data. So there's lots of data, and we talk about big data. And I personally think there's a lot of issues that come with big data. It sounds so easy. You know everything about your customers. How do you filter this into that single view of a customer? And I see that Janie is smiling, and I know she wants to answer this question.
It's quite a challenging one. I think, yeah, big data. And I think now that we've got our Omnichannel set up, we've got all of these multi-channels, and we've got data coming in terms of customer behavior, preferences, all the rich stuff that we need to action on. And we kind of need, okay, so how do we collate all of this? How do we put it in a secure place? And how do we obviously touch our customers? How do we market to our customers appropriately? And it's quite a challenging thing. I think the big companies like the Mr. Price Group and all of that, it's all about getting your systems in gear for this. I think so. It's a very challenging one. It's a huge challenge. And it's also about, the cleansing of that data. You've got all of this, it's the cleansing of the data, creating that golden record of the customer. And I think that I've seen, quite a few challenges there. But I think, that's what I think.
But your goal is that single view of the customer. And why is that so important?
I think, I know I gave you an example when we chatted earlier, is that at Discam, we had a scenario where we integrated all our data into one system, and we were sending out marketing campaigns. We were very clever on how we were doing it. We had monthly newsletters going on to specific bases, depending on customer preference. And then we got a call from a customer that said, can you stop sending my deceased husband an email? So I think, that was for us is like, how do we keep that information relevant? How do we update it? How do we integrate it into our system so we know, how to engage with the customer appropriately? Yeah.
Sam, I don't know if you want to touch on that as well, because you spoke that you work a bit in analytics. Now, for me, I love talking about digital, all this stuff, but analytics makes me get a bit shaky because I feel like I can't understand it. And I think it's very intimidating for a lot of people. So what is the role of analytics and why is it so important?
I think what I'm trying to do in my corner, and again, with digital, you're always teaching, you're learning new things. And I don't come from an analytics background, and I wouldn't say I'm an analytics person per se. So it's more about acknowledging the responsibility of business people to kind of get your mind around data science and data analytics to a certain degree so that you can ask for the right things, so that you can partner with your data scientists and your business analysts. Because before, that used to kind of happen in the back. A lot about digital is opening up the hood and trying to see how everything works, which is what I find so fascinating about it. And I think the same with analytics now. We can either have complete analysis paralysis with far too much data, or you can think, okay, understand as a business person that data has to be structured, that when you ask for information, you have to ask for it in the right way. You have to understand how much time it takes, how data visualization is going to work, exactly what is useful and what isn't useful. I mean, for me, a big moment was realizing, okay, look at the outliers, Sam. The people you have to analyze the stuff that will give you the more nuanced stuff. But from a larger perspective, find your outliers and discuss those. It's made a huge difference to the way that I deal with data people who work for us, and just think of it in my own head, an ability to actually make decisions based on data. So I also think there's a huge data myth from a Gartner hype cycle kind of point of view, where everybody thinks that everybody else has their data massively organized. And Janie and I were smiling at each other earlier and the other day. Just so there's, to have to break through that, we're all trying our best. The single view of customer is obviously this massive goal. And every year we look back and think, well, we're further ahead than we were last year, significantly so. But it's, especially if you work, I mean, Woolies is 90 years old. There's information in so many different places and nooks and crannies and silos. And our customers are really, really loyal and have engaged with us over years in various different shapes and sizes. So getting it all together has been a massive challenge. And I think there's the main thing that I'd like to get across is the responsibility of business to now get their hands dirty with data and actually understand what they're asking for.
Thanks. Peter, if I can actually come over to you, how do you manage your customers?
So I also just want to make a comment on the topic. I think, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we are predominantly living in the digital world, I guess, in that sense. And, I mean, I guess most of the business, like, Woolworths and Mr. Price as well now these days, I think, obviously online is big for everybody. And I think as such, obviously, there's a huge amount of data points available to all of us, right? And I think, I think to Jane's and Sam's point earlier, like, there's obviously the basics you need to try to get right, which is around, making sure that you validate your data, that they're clean and all that kind of stuff. But I think at the end, like, what is a reality is, I think it's super overwhelming, like, for people to, like, sort of now standing in front of all this data, and like, which sounds amazing in theory, right? Because like now you can find anything you want, right? But have you ever started using Power BI and started trying to dissect a data cube? And it's actually, it's flipping overwhelming, right? So I think what's important is to try to make that experience that actually can be super overwhelming and try to simplify as much as possible, right? And I think, you know, start with just really identifying a couple of key KPIs that you start tracking, and actually, you know, once you get, you know, get used to that and start seeing trends and like digging into it. So almost like try to, you know, I guess don't try to take too much on at once, because it can be super overwhelming, and actually it probably frightens people, and as a result they step away further. And actually I think what's important is to try to, like, you know, ease yourself into it. And I think, you know, select key KPIs. And for us, key KPIs are, for example, like one of my key KPIs is customer lifetime value. That's one of the things I look the most, and just really try to understand what does the customer lifetime value do on a per cohort level, and based on that, and really try to dissect, okay, well, this cohort has better performed than this one, and start asking questions, start digging into details. And like, you know, by doing that, you get more and more used to it. And I think at the end, you know, data is super important, right? But it's a way of how do you use them, and how do not become overwhelming.
Thanks, and that is true, and I do. That's why I say big data for me is completely overwhelming. I'd like to look at what the difference is between a multi-channel and an omni-channel. And I don't know, Sam, would you like to have a stab at that?
I think it's quite funny, you know, digital jargon is always really interesting, because it starts off meaning one thing and then we all discover, wait, back away. And I think multi-channel and omni-channel was very much like that. We all started about, I don't know, 6 years ago talking about omni-channel, and then realizing that our strategies were all multi-channel. And the main difference is, you know, in omni-channel, the customer, you find her, she finds you where she is. Whereas multi-channel is thinking of it from the business out to, like, right, have we ticked all the boxes? Have we dealt with every channel? Do we have an app? Do we have a Facebook page? Do we have the proper Google search? So you're ticking off your channels, as opposed to thinking, right, what's a holistic experience? Is it the same for her if she's on a WhatsApp bot versus if she's a call center? So it breaks it into, you want her to feel like she's talking to Woolworths the whole way around. And it's a different way of looking at the issue. Also, you know, with online, and you know, how does your in-store and your online experience, how do they relate to each other? Do you have bestsellers online as a display in store? All of those things, when you start thinking omni-channel, come up, which are the more interesting parts than just ticking off the list of different channels that you want to have in your stable.
Yeah, I agree.
Janie, I saw you nodding there. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think, Sam says, I mean, I agree with Sam in terms of how the business had felt, you know, they were excited about omni-channel, but when they actually did omni-channel, multi-channel, you know, and nothing actually spoke to each other in terms of the customer engagement or the customer experience. So, you know, they had an app, they had an online store, they had a in-store experience, but not necessarily that they spoke to the customer holistically, as in one voice to the customer. And so omni-channel for me is that integrated experience that puts the customer experience at the center of itself. So I think a good example would be, you know, you would buy a gift voucher online, a very simple example, and you could use it in a brick and mortar store. You know, typically a multi-channel would allow you to buy a gift voucher online and could only redeem it online.
Okay.
Most simplistic way to explain omni and multi.
Yes. Okay, that explains it very well. Peter, I would like to ask you, because we are talking about building a brand experience. Now, your brand has not used other brands, but partnerships with other brands to actually build your brand experience. So how do you take this, building your brand experience, giving people a great customer experience? How do you take it that step further? And how has brand partnerships helped you do that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think obviously, UCook is, I guess, arguably, but I think we are obviously a digital brand. Everything has started sort of purely being focused or based online. I think, nevertheless, obviously, customers obviously interact with us digitally, right, in terms of our website, and actually place orders digitally. But at the end, they still, receive a parcel. Like in our sense, you go on UCook, you sign up, you select your menu, and then actually from there you get billed, and then exactly at the end you get a physical product, which is at the end it's also like it's a physical experience. So in that sense, I guess any sort of you can argue we are a digital brand, but we actually are an omnichannel brand per definition, because you interact digitally, but you also interact in the physical world. You interact with us on Facebook and Instagram or what have you, right? So I think in that sense, we are per definition, I guess, omnichannel experience in general. I think what has, I guess how we have, always thought about it is, and what helped us a lot in terms of building our brand over the years is, we actually embraced sort of, I guess, using partnerships that one might think actually like, is actually partnering with competitors. And I'll come to that in a moment. But we've embraced that actually, working with different partners to, I guess, create sort of win-win situations that actually help both brands involved, or like both partners involved in that sense. And let me be more specific. So I think what a big success was for UCook over the years is, UCook obviously is, a solution for people, I guess, catering for the dinner, right? And as such, you would assume, we are in competition to restaurants, right? Because, if you eat at home, you're not going to go to restaurants. So like, you would assume UCook and restaurants are competitors, right? But I think if you followed UCook over the years, I think what we've done well is we actually partner a lot with restaurants and specific chefs as such, right? And I think that actually was always very powerful in terms of these kind of partnerships, and actually was always a nice win-win situation, because basically, for us it was great because we, I guess, sort of got interesting new dishes that customers received, new concepts and all that kind of stuff. But also for the restaurant it was great because it gave them exposure, and I think it's kind of like it's brands that are to some extent competing, but at the same time there's a lot of benefit for actually working together. And I think over the years that actually helped us a lot, to actually build our brand, and not just actually, in the digital world. I mean, we are, I guess, also quite active in, partnering with other brands that focus more on the physical environments.
Yeah, thanks. Janie, can I ask you, what do you think Mr. Price has done well in terms of digital, and what do you think the challenges still are? And you don't need to be specific. I don't need to give away strategic information, but perhaps just what do you think they are doing well, and what do you think are some of the challenges still lying ahead? And the challenges can also be just can be not specific to Mr. Price, they can be general to people who are trying to create a great brand experience online.
Very difficult question, actually. When you're asking me in terms of what we have done well, in which area are you talking? Marketing, in IT, which area basically?
Well, we're talking about building a digital brand experience. So let's perhaps bring it down to that. Perhaps there's one thing, whether it's analytics. I mean, it doesn't have to be something romantic. It could be something really functional that you feel has really helped the brand grow digitally.
So yeah, well, I actually don't represent marketing for the group. I actually sit in IT, but I can speak from an outside point of view on what I see. I think they've got a very solid SEO strategy in place. So organic strategy around bringing customers digitally to them. And I think a lot of business don't spend a lot of time on SEO and don't understand how powerful it can be to a business. Obviously, a good Google strategy and a communication strategy and a content strategy. And that's just talking from the outside, from an IT person, looking in and seeing how the different divisions across the group is handling their digital marketing. I used to run the digital marketing for Discam, and coming into that business as well, coming from like a zero sort of base on digital marketing, my approach to them was, how do I get Dis-Chem visible digitally? And the first thing or the first strategy that we had put out was Google, because we said, if someone is sick or someone is needs information about health, what is the first thing and the natural reaction to a customer? What do they do? And search was like, the most obvious. So yeah, so I think that's what Mr. Price is doing well already. And I know Dis-Chem is doing exceptionally well in this space as well. Social media. I think social media is a very powerful tool in terms of customer care and engagement. And I think that's where brands should be investing a lot in. I think, Facebook advertising is great in terms of visibility and engagement, but customer care on social media is so important, because, those are your word of mouth and how that information travels from, one customer to the other in the space, and it could be quite negative in terms of the impact on your brand. What we are challenged with is what we spoke earlier about, that single, customer cleansing of that data. And I agree with Peter, you've got to put out those KPIs. You've got to understand, okay, what is your first priority? Is it cleansing of your data? Is it merging of your data? How do you, build your customer profile? How do you understand what your customer wants? Where is your customer engaging with you? And obviously talk to your customer effectively on those channels. So I think for us, I think that's, from a marketing point of view, is the data now. Now we want to, talk to you, but in the relevant way. So
yeah,
I hope that, I don't know.
thanks. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm from IT and I represent IT.
I think you could work in marketing. You sound, you know all about it. Sam, perhaps you can also answer the same question for me. So really, what do you think Woolworths is doing well? Maybe what do they still need to do? Maybe you could also give us some advice.
From Woolies, and clearly I've drunk the Woolworths Kool-Aid because I'm a big believer, but and I'm not responsible for this part of the business, so I'm not blowing my own horn, but I think the content that we create is really beautiful. And I think that starts the conversation well. And also, one of the things we have is that we have very loyal customers and people are very interested in Woolworths. So our social media interaction is really huge. We've got millions of followers and very, very vocal customers. And I think that that sets us up to have conversations as opposed to just broadcast. So while we start a conversation with a really beautiful piece of content, often those kind of there's a great opportunity for us to be using, we get a lot of user generated content. You just look at your own feeds, a lot of people sharing their Woolworths food, or, you know, we just launched a pet food range, and then we just inundated with pictures of people, of people's dogs with the pet food. And so that kind of thing, it's working out how to do that together. I think that's a real opportunity for us, how vocal our customers are. Of course, then the other side is, from a social customer care point of view, people get very upset if Woolworths doesn't live up to their standards. So that's something that we always have to balance. And we put a lot of work into that corner, making sure it's resourced properly, making sure from an omni-channel perspective, it's a big project for us, getting the tone right across the piece. And then again, for big businesses, I think balancing agility and consistency is incredibly hard. So we put a lot of work into the IT infrastructure. Hans spoke this morning on how to develop product teams to support that, so that you can balance agility and consistency. So that's a big deal. I think we started quite early, and I think that was quite good, and got C-suite buy-in quite early. So we've tried a lot of stuff and done a lot of optimization specifically around our media buying, keeping our costs low. And I think, I think it's just
Perhaps
such a
I can
huge
ask
challenge.
you this.
Yeah.
Perhaps I can ask you this. I've often heard that with digital, you must try, and you can fail, but you should still try. Do you think there's some truth in that?
Absolutely. I'm like a big believer in second mover advantage. Let someone else give it a whirl and then see what they learn. But I don't think as a business, we are very, a business focused on innovation. So there's balance there. Yeah, it's difficult because you've got to kind of, especially if you've got a business which is seen as quite a premium business. And then you want to be trialing stuff, you want to be launching MVPs, you want to be building things as you fly them. And the customer doesn't expect a brand like Woolworths to be doing that. So we have launched things which we've said, right, this is our minimal viable product, this is a trial, this is a whatever. And we are trying to get more into that space, but it is difficult. And from a company culture point of view, to launch something that's not 100% perfect because it's new, But yes, so that is a balance.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the
Peter,
question.
I think you did, yes. Peter, so you launched a digital product. And so I need to ask you that, did you go, okay, we could fail, we could make this work. And then given that, how do you also engage your customers? So I order my YouCook basket and it's wonderful, but you need me to come back. And I mean, I can go to Woolies and go buy their new range of pet food or whatever it is. So how do you engage me to bring me back? Because if I go on my mobile, I mean, there's just stuff everywhere, products, and also, what your feeds are like. How do you break through that clutter and get me to come back and back and back?
Yeah, it's not always easy, I guess. I think, and I think, you didn't ask me a question that you asked Sam and Janie. I think I was quite keen to say that our YouCook content is almost as beautiful as the Woolworths content. Maybe not as beautiful, but I think not too bad. I think, I thought about it in the following way that, what is it that I guess sort of I believe we are doing well, or at least I think that we put quite a lot of attention on as a business. I think if I have to single out one item, I think it's probably related to really trying to solve a problem for the customer at the end, or provide a solution. I think rather than I guess sort of give an offering to the customer and then put them in front of this decision making, and almost like sometimes create more of a problem than actually a solution. So I think our focus is very much oriented around really trying to simplify things and providing an end-to-end solution for the customer, right? And I think as such, just really make it convenient to actually, I guess, consume a product that, speaks to multiple USPs, and as such, I guess, speaks to different customer types. And I think by doing that, we're appealing to different customer types because we're catering for different USPs. And I think we're trying to really nail these USPs as much as we can. And as such, I think customers appreciate that, right? I think, and YouCook obviously speaks to different USPs, being it I guess, rediscovering cooking at home, eating healthy, and what have you. There's different elements of what we're trying to speak to. And I think we're trying to really focus on that one thing and try to do this as good as we can. And I think customers appreciate that, right? I think customers appreciate the fact that we're trying to help them, and we're trying to make, today's life is already super busy. Everybody works long hours, lots of responsibilities. And I think we're just trying to be that sort of element of your day that you can look forward to. Now you actually don't have to worry about dinner anymore because it's just at home. All you to do is, come home and actually cook it, right? And I think that's sort of our philosophy a little bit. And I think, as we expand, we're looking into other categories. We're trying to just build more on that. We've launched frozen craft meals that, cater for the same customer, but different occasions. So I think, I guess that's our main focus as a business.
I think what it comes down to, what you're saying is really what Sam and Janie were saying, is you have to be consistent. So digital is no different to the rest of the marketing mix. If you're not consistent, you're really going to confuse your customer, and that's going to alienate them. I think we have some time left, and I'd like to finish off with just one question to each of you, the same question. What to you is the biggest trend or factor that is going to influence the space going forward in the next 5 years? Peter, I've got you on the screen, so I don't know if you want to start.
So,
put you on the spot there.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot. Just tell me, you're referring, what is the one trend, with regards to what?
Building a brand digitally. So what do you think is the one trend that is going to influence the space the most?
I think, yeah, he's putting me in the spot, but I think it's, I would say that over the last sort of, I guess, couple of years, what has become quite apparent is that that every customer is unique. And I think what customers want is they want to feel like they are treated accordingly, right? Nobody's the same anymore. And I think, you know, it's a lot about customization. And I think a lot of that comes from, I guess, you know, the rise of social media, the rise of Instagram, and, you know, people live on these platforms and they see what other people are doing. And I think the element around, like, you know, very much having a bespoke, I guess, sort of offering that caters for the different needs of customers, I think it's just more accelerating. I think the fact that, you know, the rise of, I guess, you know, doing things more last minute also speaks to the element around bespoke solutions, and that just gets more like, you know, the rise of Checker 660 or Woolies Dash, where people want to, like, they don't want to make, they don't necessarily want to plan long time ahead, right? They want to make be impulsive, they want to be unique, they want to do what they want to feel at that moment. And I think that is just increasing more. And I think, yeah, I think it's an interesting trend. And I think it's a big one.
Thank you. Janie, you want to go next?
Yeah, I agree with Peter. It's all around customer centricity. I think that's the word that everyone's using. Integrating yourself into their lives. I think that's the big next for us. It's here already. I mean, it's new to us, you know, but it's the integrating ourselves into the customer's life, making that our customer's life convenient, seamless, like, you know, part of their lives. We elevate them in their lives. We're there to assist them, you know. And then the other one is, you know, all of this data, understanding the customer and what do we do with it, you know, our actions around our data-led insights. So that's, I feel, is the next for businesses like us.
Thanks. Sam?
I always find the 5-year question a little worrying on it from a digital perspective, because, you know, I don't want to plan 5 years in advance. I feel it could go horribly pear-shaped. But to me, it's the actual application of single voice of customer, single view of customer, sorry, the single view of, well, single voice as well as part of. But, you know, we acknowledge that for ages, years and years and years, we've been saying single view of the customer lead to personalization. And that's what we all need to be doing. As you say, making it more seamless, making it more painless for the customer, being customer focused. And I think we've spent a lot of time talking about stuff that's incredibly difficult to do, especially from a large business perspective. I think a lot of us found out how difficult it is to do. And the next period is about actually harnessing all that work that we put in terms of getting the systems in place in the back end, and cleaning data, structuring data, working out which plugs you need into which other parts of the business, so that we can actually use that data to inform personalized content. So I'm thinking there'll be a lot more of individual A/B test kind of options, having that much more built into the process, refining your cohorts, refining individual journeys, that will become less of a theory and more practice.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thank you, Danette. And a big thank you to our panelists, Janie, Peter, and Sam. Thank you very much.